What if I told you your inability to focus is not about some apps or super long to-do lists or productivity dashboards that productivity advice often pushes you towards? It's about rewiring how your brain naturally works so you can be in a state of focus without any external tools. I used to be constantly distracted all the time, but now I can focus for 6 to 13 hours, 7 days a week, and actually enjoy it. So in this video, I'll show you the 6 simple tactics I've refined over about 8 years of struggling to get focused, so you can train your focus on a daily basis, and how you can implement it in just 3 to 6 weeks. And to start, let me show you the military trick that they use to always accomplish their mission objectives even in the chaos of war, and how you can apply this for your focus in achieving your goals. So imagine being part of a covert operation where you only know a fraction of the plan, because in top secret missions they often do this. So if you got captured by the enemy, you only know a certain part and the whole mission is not blown. So all you and your squad know, so this is your squad right here, you know that all you have to do is take the enemy information in their base, and all the other people in the wider squads, their goal is to secure the route so you can get this information. But suddenly within the mission, you're separated from the larger squad. So now this original plan is completely invalid. You're no longer able to allow this larger squad to secure your route because you don't even know where they are. You're stuck by any enemy lines alone, low on supplies. What would you do in this situation? This situation actually did happen to a squad in real life. Despite the chaos, they remember something called commander's intent. This is a principle that's used in the military a lot. That's basically the commander's reason for the mission. And this allows each individual soldier, so in this case, this squad, to formulate its own plan despite the plan going wrong. So the commander's intent in this case was also to get the information from the enemy. With this in mind, they actually interestingly discovered a sewage pipe that led them into the base of the enemy, which maybe they could steal the information from. Unexpectedly, was unguarded and allowed them to sneak into the enemy base. So they took this information out without the help of the wider squad, and they were able to even place bombs within the pipe and just blow the whole thing up so that the enemy could not follow them. So how do you use this concept of commander's intent for yourself, beyond military operations? 3 different steps. Step 1, simply just write your commander's intent, and don't overcomplicate this at all. For example, it could be as simple as oh, I want to build a business, I want to get in shape, I want to figure out what my calling is, or what high income skill I want to learn. Any of those could be your commander's intent. And step 2 is to use it. So whenever you're thinking about what do I need to do, what are the different tasks I need to do, always think of your commander's intent. And then each day when you're writing down your tasks, you would ask 2 different questions. 1, does it get me closer to my commander's intent? And then 2, is this the highest priority? So for example, if your goal is I want to build a business, but you don't know what business you actually want to start yet, then one of the tasks could be, just go watch some YouTube videos on the different businesses that I could start. And then you go through these questions. So in this case, would it be yes or no? In this case, yes, it does get you closer. And then is it highest priority? Yes, because you don't know where to start yet. So it is both yes. And if it is both yes, then you go do it. But then in step 3, if any of them are no, then you simply just start over with your commander's intent, and you go through this process to think about what task actually is moving you closer and highest priority. And try to do at least one thing a day that is both yes. But even with your commander's intent, you're probably still going to get distracted. How do you always stay focused on each of the tasks while you're actually working? Well, did you know that 51% of Gen Z, compared to only 9% of boomers, report symptoms of things like ADHD, so they can't focus? And it's not because we're getting better at diagnosing it, because these are self-reported numbers. It's because in the modern day, there's a huge number of things that completely fry your brain with huge amounts of dopamine. But I was able to fix my super cooked brain from watching YouTube videos and playing video games constantly with a technique I call dopamine anchoring. And I made this chart here to show you how it works. So within dopamine anchoring, you have on the y-axis the dopamine load, so how much your dopamine level is in your brain. And then you have on the x-axis time, so how much time has went by with those dopamine levels. And you're likely all the way up here at deep fried brain. And I call this top area here the cooked zone. And then in the middle area, it has somewhat normal levels of dopamine. You can function, you can work a little bit. It's like the room temperature zone. But where you actually want to get is all the way at the bottom, which is what I call the work zone. This is where you can work hours and hours a day, pretty much all day, without ever feeling the need to get distracted. So of course, throughout the day, your dopamine goes up and down because you do something engaging and then it starts to drop, but then you're not used to having your dopamine that low. So as soon as it starts to drop, you raise it again. Eventually this forms a baseline. And what you want to do is work your baseline dopamine down and down and down and down. So within each level, there's designated steps to go through 2 levels to finally reach the work zone. So how do you do this? How do you move down all the way to the work zone, no matter where you are? So there's 6 different steps which will take your brain from the cooked zone all the way up here to the work zone. And even if you're not cooked right now, all of these steps will help you get more and more focused regardless. So starting with level 1, which will get you out of the completely cooked zone, brain that can barely focus for like 5 seconds. So if you imagine a dog here, if you have a dog that you're training, of course, if you take the dog and you give him a treat, then you tell the dog to sit, eventually the dog's gonna sit down. This is very similar for you. So all you have to do is work for like 5-10 minutes at first. Just try to push through the work 5-10 minutes and then go play your games. Don't try to push any longer. Go watch your anime, play your games, scroll your social media, whatever it is that you always get distracted on. What this does is it associates your work with the treat. And eventually, with that association, you'll begin to learn to work all the time. Like a dog, train yourself. But you're better than a dog. Doing like one trick at a time for just a few minutes and always constantly needing like another treat, another treat, another treat is not going to really get you any progress. So that's where we move into level 2 with what I call the monkey method, which will get you working a bit longer. And to teach you how to use this effect, what would you do with these bananas if they were just sitting on your counter? Like maybe you went back from the grocery store and you have these 3 bananas. So you have an unopened banana, you have an open one that you just opened, and you have one that you already finished eating. Most likely, you'd probably take this unopened banana and you'd like put it away into the counter. This already opened banana, you would probably just eat it, and completely finished banana, you'd probably just throw it in the trash, right? The task you want to focus on, or the question you're trying to answer, is exactly the same. It works exactly the same. So for the unopened questions, or the task that you haven't started yet, is actually just like the open banana. You're not really interested in these. You'll end up just like putting it away in the cabinet. You slap it on a to-do list and completely forget about it. But as soon as you open it, something very interesting happens. Now, you want to finish it. You want to turn it into a finished banana. This is curiosity from the monkey effect and will get you from starting tasks and then spending time to turn it into a finished task. And then, those finished tasks, you of course just completely forget about them, delete them from your to-do list. So the simple step to apply this is to simply, before you go and do your distraction, you're like, you work your 5-10 minutes and you're like, okay, I want to go play games now. Don't do that quite yet. Add one more step and just to look ahead a little bit and think about like, oh, what is the next question? Just look at it. And a lot of the times you'll find that just that curiosity of opening the question will want you to go and try to finish it. And this will get you to working longer, focusing longer, maybe up to like 30 to 90 minutes now. But there's a problem. You likely can't get yourself to consistently do this every single day. Maybe it's like a one-off day and the next day you don't feel like it. And if you can't get this consistent focus, you'll never really get any work done. So level 3 is getting your focus consistent. And we can use something I call the replacement method. So imagine there's this obese person who always likes to drink chocolate milk. Without using a replacement method, he realized this chocolate milk is making him obese. So one day, if he just goes and cuts out the chocolate milk completely and goes to like drinking water, in a couple of weeks, he can't stick to it because it's too much of a change. He'll go back to drinking the chocolate milk. But with the replacement method, he'll go from like, oh, chocolate milk to now drinking whole milk, or from whole milk to drinking now skim chocolate milk, or skim chocolate milk to drinking like purely skim milk. And through these incremental changes, he can go from obese to just like regular stick figure. So to start, very simply what you do, you're initially playing like video games right now, or you're like scrolling social media, watching like TikTok videos. Simply replace that with something slightly less engaging, only slightly. So that would be something like just watching anime or watching more maybe long form YouTube content. But now, even though you can consistently work for like 90 minutes per day, if you can't work for longer than that, you're never going to get to like Jeff Bezos level, right? So in level 4, there's a technique called workload projection that will exploit a psychological effect in your mind called social consistency to get you working far past 90 minutes. And a super prime example of this psychological effect, it was during the Korean War. So this is a true story. China actually captured a bunch of American soldiers and they would keep them in communist brainwashing camps, And the way they would do this was actually they would allow the soldiers to send letters to their families in America. So the soldiers would write their letters, but the reason why they would let them to send it to their families is because every single time they sent the letter, they would be forced to write a communist propaganda note in there, and then okay, they can send it to the family. And through this process over and over again, sending back and forth letters, with social consistency, eventually they let them out of the brainwashing camp and sent them home. They end up being communists themselves, because through writing that communist propaganda in the letters over and over again, even though they really didn't believe it, they started to believe it for themselves because they said they would do it. Therefore, in order to stay consistent with that, and now that their families hear it, they just became communists. So how do you use this for focus is the technique I called workload projection. So you can think of your task you can work on today based on your commander's intent, like we went over before. And then for each of the tasks, you simply just think about how long is it going to take. Then you simply just pick the different tasks that you think you can get done and into the next day. And then based on your time estimate, so you're telling yourself that, okay, I can get all of these tasks done in the next day. And then in the next day, you simply just go and work on those tasks. And then the effect of the social consistency will keep you working until you actually finish them, because you already told yourself that. And of course, this effect will build over time. This social consistency will, get brainwashed into your brain over time. And soon you'll get really good at this. And at this point, you're actually just at the threshold. You're at level 4. So you're right at the threshold of going into level 5 into the work zone, or down over here. And this is probably the simplest step. If you remember back in actually level 3 where you do the replacement method of like the chocolate milk. So you switched from doing like your video games to now just watching anime, something slightly less engaging. Now you're just going to switch to like reading a book or watching a documentary or like going to exercise. This will lower the dopamine levels while keeping your workload the same. So when your dopamine is a level, it allows you to focus on your work even deeper. So with that simple replacement, you're in level 5, and you could stay in this level 5 forever because this is pretty good in the work zone. But sometimes you do want to go into level 6. This is like the times where you want to do some insane work like 13 to 18 hours a day. And of course, this is not healthy in the long term, but it's necessary sometimes. So I could talk about this for like hours and hours and hours, all the different techniques you could do. But the most simple way to put it is, if you crack, you break. So if you have a rock here, you think about a rock and it cracked. This crack is only going to get bigger, and eventually the rock is just going to completely break into multiple pieces. You're exactly the same. If you want to stay in level 6, you are this rock. You have to prevent yourself from cracking, because if you crack at all, if you go and do anything entertaining, anything more pleasurable than your work, it's going to make a little crack, and eventually that crack's going to grow bigger and bigger and bigger until you break in half, and you go on like a marathon of watching anime or playing video games for hours and just like feel tired in your work. So very simply, like junk food, get rid of it because it's too stimulating. Dirty videos, don't watch them. Video games, don't play them. Shows or animes, don't watch them. Social media, don't look at it. The only thing you should do, the only thing that you can get your pleasure out of, should be the work that you want to focus on. And this will keep you in level 6. So basically like monk mode. So this was a lot of different steps to take you from all the way up here to deep fried, all the way down to like super work zone enlightened brain. How long does this actually take? Or how can you make it only 3 to 6 weeks to accomplish this entire process? Well, there's actually an industry that is extremely established already that we can take from in order to make this 3 to 6 weeks. That industry is NoFap. So I've been on semen retention actually, so like this is like a subset of NoFap that's a bit harder for about 5 years now. At this point, I can quite easily do like 90+ day streaks of semen retention, but it wasn't like that initially. For probably the first 3 years or so, in a couple of days I would feel the urges and then go into like smacking the monkey. But from doing this, I felt terrible. I would never get any work done. So I did a ton of research in NoFap and semen retention, and there was a method that I came up with myself that's actually used not only in NoFap, it's actually used in like drug addictions and all types of addiction that are basically super high dopamine spiking. I made a nut schedule. I literally, for the first week, I forced myself to bust a nut every single day. Even if I didn't feel like, I would just force it out, bust one out. And the next week, I would just remove one day. So bust 6 times, and then 5 times, and then 4 times, and then 3 times, and then finally 2 times. And on that week that I was supposed to only bust once, that is when I went for the long streak. And then boom, 90 days easy after that. I went over 90 days, my first over 90 day streak. And this is actually due to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks of weaning, exactly 6 weeks. So how can you use this for yourself for focus? If you're starting at level 1, all the way up here, of course, you just spend 1 week in each of the levels until you finally get to the bottom, exactly 6 weeks. And this will naturally lower the baselines And if you're already at higher level, so if you say you're level 3, then of course you just start there and move on. And of course try to still implement the steps from the previous levels because they are very helpful for focus if you haven't done them already. And this is actually based on science of creating and destroying habits. It's proven that it takes 21 to 90 days, which correlates to 3 to 6 weeks, very interestingly. But once you've installed this internal focus system, you can focus like 12 plus hours a day, every single day, no problem. But the problem is, even if you fix your dopamine, you don't get distracted. A lot of times, your work is just so painful. You don't feel motivated, and you just force yourself through it by using these focus tactics. But this is your goal. This is what you want. It should feel enjoyable, should be feeling satisfying. How do you fix that? You can watch this video here to learn about how I focus for 12 plus hours a day and get enjoyment and satisfaction out of it.